This video contains only audio content. It does not include any visuals or images. If you are expecting video footage, please be aware of this. This is intentionally provided in an audio-only format. We recommend that you listen to the audio rather than looking at the screen. Thank you for your understanding. 1. Overview of the cult. In the annals of religious movements and spiritual teachings, few are as enigmatic and controversial as the Urantia Book and the belief system that has formed around it. At first glance, the Urantia Book may seem like just another obscure spiritual text, a massive tome of over 2,000 pages that claims to offer new revelations about God, the universe, and the meaning of human existence. But dig deeper, and you'll find a fascinating and troubling history involving purported celestial beings, eugenics, and a blend of Christianity and science fiction that has captivated followers for decades. The Urantia Book first appeared in Chicago in the 1920s and 30s, emerging from a series of mysterious, sleeping subject sessions conducted by a psychiatrist named William Sadler. The book claims to be a revelation from various celestial beings, transmitted through an anonymous human conduit. It presents an elaborate cosmology involving multiple universes and planets, with Earth, called Urantia, occupying a special place in the grand scheme of creation. The teachings blend aspects of Christianity with concepts that seem pulled from science fiction, including detailed histories of extraterrestrial races and intricate hierarchies of spiritual beings. At the same time, the book contains troubling ideas about racial hierarchies and eugenics that reflect some of the darker ideologies of the early 20th century. Since its formal publication in 1955, the Urantia Book has attracted a dedicated following of readers and believers who see it as a profound spiritual truth. Organizations like the Urantia Foundation and Urantia Book Fellowship have formed to promote its teachings. While not as well known as some other new religious movements, the Urantia community has had an outsized influence in certain spheres, including, surprisingly, the world of herbal tea. The story of the Urantia Book and its followers is one of grand cosmic visions and earthly controversies. It's a tale that touches on big questions of faith, pseudoscience, and the human desire for transcendent meaning. By examining this unusual belief system, we can gain insights into the allure of fringe spirituality and the ways that seemingly benign New Age philosophies can mask more troubling ideologies. As we delve into the history and teachings of this movement, we'll encounter an intriguing cast of characters, from the enigmatic Chicago doctor who birthed the Urantia Book, to the hippie tea entrepreneurs who embraced its teachings. We'll explore how ideas that many would consider outlandish, from blue-skinned aliens to eugenics programs, found their way into a spiritual text that continues to inspire devotion. And we'll grapple with difficult questions about the line between revelation and delusion, between cosmic wisdom and pseudoscience. The Urantia movement challenges us to think critically about how spiritual beliefs form and spread, how fringe ideas can infiltrate mainstream culture, and how the human impulse for meaning can lead us down strange and sometimes dangerous paths. Whether you see the Urantia Book as divine truth, imaginative fiction, or something more sinister, its story sheds light on the complex ways that spirituality, ideology, and culture intertwine in the modern world. So settle in as we embark on a journey through the cosmos and the recesses of the human mind, to unravel the curious tale of the Urantia Book and the belief system it spawned. It's a story by turns inspiring, disturbing, and utterly fascinating, one that will challenge your assumptions and leave you pondering the very nature of spiritual truth. 2. Founder and history of the cult. To understand the origins of the Urantia Book and the movement it spawned, we must first turn our attention to a man named William Samuel Sadler. Born in 1875 in Spencer, Indiana, Sadler would go on to become a prominent Chicago psychiatrist and the key figure behind the Urantia revelations. But the path that led him there was a winding one, shaped by the spiritual and intellectual currents of late 19th and early 20th century America. Sadler's early life was steeped in religion. His parents were converts to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a Protestant denomination known for its emphasis on the Second Coming of Christ and observance of the Saturday Sabbath. Young William was baptized into the faith at age 13, and it would profoundly shape his worldview in the years to come. As a teenager, Sadler moved to Battle Creek, Michigan, a hub of Adventist activity and home to the famous Battle Creek Sanitarium run by Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Yes, that Kellogg, of cornflake fame. Kellogg was a larger-than-life figure who combined religious fervor with an obsessive focus on health and hygiene. He would become a mentor to the young Sadler, instilling in him a lifelong interest in medicine, nutrition, and what we might today call wellness. Sadler worked various jobs at the sanitarium, from bellhop to medical assistant. He absorbed Kellogg's teachings on diet, exercise, and the evils of masturbation, a particular obsession of the good doctor. But he also developed his own interests, particularly in public speaking and writing. By his late teens, Sadler was already giving lectures on history and religion. In 1897, Sadler married Lena Celestia Kellogg, a nurse and niece of his mentor. The couple shared a passion for medicine and missionary work. They spent time in San Francisco, where Sadler studied at Cooper Medical College, now part of Stanford, and worked for various Adventist causes. But tragedy struck in 1900 when their infant son died. This loss seems to have shaken Sadler's faith and set him on a new path of spiritual seeking. Returning to the Midwest, the Sadlers both earned medical degrees in Chicago. William began to drift away from Adventism, especially after the church excommunicated his mentor Kellogg in 1907 over doctrinal disputes. Sadler was developing a more scientific, rationalist worldview, albeit one still tinged with spiritual yearnings. It was around this time that Sadler's career took a fateful turn. In 1906 or 1907, accounts vary, he was called to treat a patient suffering from unusual sleep disturbances. This anonymous man, known in Urantia lore as the sleeping subject, would become the conduit for the revelations that formed the Urantia Book. According to Sadler's later accounts, the sleeping subject would enter trance-like states and speak in voices claiming to be celestial beings. At first skeptical, Sadler became convinced over time that something genuinely paranormal was occurring. He assembled a group of friends and colleagues to observe the phenomenon and ask questions of the supposed extraterrestrial intelligences. These sessions continued for years, with the celestial beings allegedly transmitting vast amounts of information about the nature of the universe, the history of Earth, or Urantia, and the life of Jesus. Sadler and his associates compiled and edited this material into what would become the Urantia Book. It's worth noting that Sadler had previously been a skeptic of spiritualism and psychic phenomena. He had even written a book debunking such claims. So his embrace of the Urantia revelations marked a significant shift in his thinking. Some have speculated that Sadler himself may have been the true author of the Urantia material, perhaps drawing on his extensive knowledge of religion, philosophy, and science to craft an elaborate spiritual narrative. Whatever the true source, the Urantia sessions continued through the 1920s and 30s. During this time, Sadler's psychiatric practice flourished and he became a well-known figure in Chicago. He wrote numerous books on health, psychology, and self-help topics. Some of these works promoted ideas about eugenics and racial hierarchies that were unfortunately common in scientific circles of the time, ideas that would find their way into the Urantia teachings as well. By the 1940s, the text of the Urantia Book was largely complete. Sadler and his associates formed the Urantia Foundation in 1950 to oversee its publication and dissemination. The book was finally published in 1955, presented as a revelation from celestial beings but with no listed human author. In the years following its publication, the Urantia Book attracted a small but dedicated following. Study groups formed to discuss its teachings. The Urantia Brotherhood, later renamed the Urantia Book Fellowship, was established as a membership organization for believers. Sadler himself remained involved with the Urantia movement until his death in 1969 at the age of 93. He continued to promote the book and its teachings, though he always maintained that he was not its author. In his later years, he focused on reconciling the Urantia cosmology with developments in science and theology. The decades following Sadler's death saw both growth and conflict within the Urantia movement. The 1960s and 70s counterculture provided fertile ground for the book's blend of spirituality and cosmic speculation. But there were also schisms and legal battles over control of the copyright and the orthodoxy of various Urantia groups. One notable development was the embrace of Urantia teachings by Mo Siegel, co-founder of the Celestial Seasonings Tea Company. Siegel discovered the book in 1969 and claimed it profoundly influenced his business philosophy. He would go on to become president of the Urantia Foundation in the 2000s. Today, the Urantia Book remains a niche but persistent presence in the spiritual landscape. Its influence can be seen in various New Age movements and UFO subcultures. The organizations that promote it maintain a low profile compared to some other new religious movements, but continue to publish and disseminate the book around the world. The story of William Sadler and the origins of the Urantia Book is a fascinating case study in how new religious movements emerge. It shows how individual spiritual seeking, cultural trends, and purported supernatural events can combine to produce novel belief systems. The Urantia teachings reflect many of the preoccupations of early 20th century America, from psychical research to eugenics to space exploration, filtered through a lens of Christian-influenced spirituality. As we delve deeper into the doctrines and practices that grew out of Sadler's fateful encounters with the sleeping subject, we'll see how these various threads came together to form a unique cosmology and worldview. The Urantia Book and the movement it inspired stand as a testament to humanity's enduring quest for transcendent meaning, and to the complex, sometimes troubling ways that quest can manifest. 3. Doctrine. The doctrines and teachings of the Urantia Book present a vast and intricate cosmic philosophy that blends elements of Christianity, science fiction, and esoteric spirituality. At over 2,000 pages, the book offers an elaborate cosmology and theology that its adherents see as a revolutionary new revelation about the nature of God, the universe, and humanity's place within it. At the core of Urantia teachings is the concept of a hierarchical universe structure. According to the book, our realm of existence is just one small part of a vast, superuniverse, divided into 7 major sections. Earth, or Urantia, as it's called in the text, is located in a local universe named Nebadon, which is part of the superuniverse, Orvonton. This cosmic geography is populated by a dizzying array of spiritual beings and extraterrestrial races. At the top of the hierarchy is the Universal Father, the Urantia conception of God as the source and center of all reality. Below the Universal Father are various orders of divine beings, including the Eternal Son and Infinite Spirit, who form a kind of trinity with the Father. The book describes legions of angelic beings, administrative, super angels, and other cosmic personalities that oversee various aspects of universal affairs. Many of these beings are given elaborate titles like Mighty Messenger, Solitary Messenger, or Trinity Teacher Son. One of the most distinctive aspects of Urantia cosmology is its teaching about multiple ascension careers for human souls. The book claims that after death, human personalities embark on a long journey of spiritual growth and development through various celestial realms. This process eventually culminates in reaching paradise, the dwelling place of God, and achieving a state of finality as perfected spiritual beings. The Urantia Book presents an unorthodox take on Christian theology and biblical history. While it affirms the existence of Jesus, referred to as Christ Michael, it reinterprets his nature and mission in cosmic terms. According to the book, Jesus was an incarnation of a divine, Creator Son, who oversees our local universe. His life on earth was part of a larger plan to bring spiritual enlightenment to humanity. The book provides an elaborate retelling of Jesus' life, including details of his childhood and young adulthood not found in the Bible. It claims to offer the true meaning of his teachings, often diverging significantly from traditional Christian interpretations. Another major focus of Urantia doctrine is the concept of epical revelations. The book teaches that throughout history, celestial beings have periodically intervened to advance human spiritual and cultural evolution. It identifies 5 major epical revelations, with the Urantia Book itself purportedly being the 5th and most comprehensive. Interestingly, the book incorporates elements of evolutionary theory, presenting a view of cosmic and human development that attempts to reconcile scientific ideas with spiritual concepts. It describes a long process of planetary evolution overseen by various orders of celestial life carriers and administrators. However, this is where some of the more troubling aspects of Urantia teaching emerge. The book presents a hierarchical view of human races that echoes early 20th century eugenics theories. It describes 6 colored races: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and indigo, with varying levels of evolutionary advancement. The text suggests that selective breeding and elimination of inferior stocks are part of the divine plan for human progress. These racial teachings, along with other pseudoscientific claims in the book, have been a source of controversy and criticism. They reflect some of the misguided and harmful ideas prevalent in certain scientific and philosophical circles of the era when the book was produced. Rituals and practices among Urantia believers tend to be less formalized than in many other religious groups. There is no official priesthood or required set of observances. However, study of the Urantia book itself is central to the spiritual life of adherents. Many participate in regular study groups where they read and discuss passages from the text. Some Urantia followers engage in practices like meditation or prayer, often focused on connecting with the thought adjuster, a fragment of God said to indwell each person. The book encourages a life of service and spiritual growth, but leaves the specifics largely up to individual interpretation. One notable practice that has emerged in some Urantia circles is the celebration of Jesus' birthday on August 21st, the date given in the book, rather than the traditional December 25th. Some groups hold special gatherings or ceremonies on this date. The Urantia book also puts a strong emphasis on the importance of family life and child rearing as part of spiritual development. It presents ideals of marriage and parenting that adherents are encouraged to strive for. In terms of ethics and morality, the Urantia teachings generally align with mainstream Western values, emphasizing love, service, and personal spiritual growth. However, the book's endorsement of eugenics and racial hierarchies has led some critics to accuse the movement of promoting racist ideologies, even if most modern adherents reject or reinterpret these aspects. It's worth noting that there is no single, monolithic interpretation of Urantia doctrines. Different readers and groups may emphasize different aspects of the teachings or interpret them in varying ways. Some approach the book more literally, while others view it more metaphorically or selectively. When compared to mainstream religions, the Urantia belief system stands out for its elaborate cosmic mythology and blend of spiritual and pseudoscientific concepts. Unlike most traditional faiths, it claims to offer detailed knowledge about the structure of the universe and the nature of extraterrestrial life. Its attempt to reconcile religious ideas with scientific theories, albeit often outdated ones, is also somewhat distinctive. In relation to other new religious movements or UFO religions, the Urantia teachings share some common themes, such as belief in extraterrestrial influences on human affairs and a cosmic hierarchy of beings. However, its strong grounding in Christian concepts and lack of a living charismatic leader or prophet set it apart from many such groups. The Urantia book's teachings on personal spiritual growth and cosmic evolution have found resonance with some in the New Age movement. However, the rigid structure of its cosmology and its roots in early 20th century thought make it something of an outlier in modern alternative spirituality. Ultimately, the doctrines of the Urantia book present a unique blend of religious, philosophical, and pseudoscientific ideas that have captivated some seekers while baffling or disturbing others. Its grand cosmic narrative offers followers a sense of meaning and purpose within a vast universal scheme. At the same time, its more controversial teachings highlight the potential dangers of uncritically accepting purported revelations, no matter how elaborate or superficially impressive they may be. As we continue our exploration of this unusual belief system, we'll see how these doctrines have shaped the lives of adherents and influenced their interactions with the wider world. The story of the Urantia movement is, in many ways, a story of how ideas, both inspiring and troubling, can take root and spread in the fertile soil of human spiritual longing. 4. Organization and recruitment methods. Unlike many new religious movements, the Urantia community lacks a centralized authority structure or formal priesthood. Instead, it consists of a loose network of organizations, study groups, and individual believers united by their interest in the Urantia book. This decentralized nature has allowed for a diversity of interpretations and approaches within the movement, but has also led to conflicts and schisms over the years. The primary organizations involved in promoting and disseminating the Urantia teachings are the Urantia Foundation and the Urantia Book Fellowship, formerly the Urantia Brotherhood. These two groups have sometimes been at odds, particularly over issues of copyright and control of the Urantia text. The Urantia Foundation, established in 1950, is the original custodian of the Urantia Book. Based in Chicago, it holds the copyright to the text and oversees its publication and translation. The Foundation sees itself as responsible for preserving the integrity of the Urantia revelation and ensuring its dissemination around the world. It has traditionally taken a more conservative approach, emphasizing fidelity to the original text and cautioning against reinterpretations or additions to the teachings. The Urantia Book Fellowship, on the other hand, is a membership organization for readers and believers. Founded in 1955 as the Urantia Brotherhood, it organizes conferences, supports study groups, and produces secondary literature about the Urantia teachings. The fellowship has generally been more open to diverse interpretations of the book and has sometimes clashed with the Foundation over issues of control and orthodoxy. In addition to these main organizations, there are numerous local and regional Urantia groups around the world. These range from informal study circles to more structured societies. Some operate independently, while others are affiliated with either the Foundation or the Fellowship. The economic aspects of the Urantia movement are relatively modest compared to some other new religious organizations. The Urantia Foundation and Fellowship are non-profit entities that rely largely on donations and book sales to fund their activities. There's no system of mandatory tithing or membership fees, although supporters are encouraged to contribute financially to the cause. One notable economic connection is the involvement of Mo Siegel, co-founder of Celestial Seasonings Tea Company. Siegel, a devoted Urantia believer, has been a major donor to Urantia causes and served as president of the Urantia Foundation from 2002 to 2014. This link between the Urantia movement and a successful business has led to some raised eyebrows and speculation about the influence of the teachings in corporate circles. When it comes to recruitment and missionary activities, the Urantia movement takes a relatively low-key approach compared to many other religious groups. There's no aggressive proselytizing or street evangelism. Instead, the focus is on making the Urantia book available to those who are interested and supporting readers in their study of the text. Common methods of outreach include 1. Book placement programs. The Urantia Foundation and other groups work to place copies of the Urantia book in libraries, bookstores, and other public locations. 2. Online presence. Various Urantia-related websites offer information about the teachings, study aids, and free access to the text of the book. 3. Study groups. Local Urantia study groups often welcome newcomers who are curious about the teachings. 4. Conferences and seminars. Larger gatherings allow believers to come together and often include sessions open to the public. 5. Personal networking. Many people discover the Urantia book through friends, family members, or colleagues who are readers. While these methods are generally benign, some critics have raised concerns about more subtle forms of persuasion or indoctrination within the Urantia community. The sheer complexity and volume of the Urantia teachings can create a kind of intellectual dependence, where believers rely heavily on more experienced readers or experts to interpret the material for them. There have been allegations of love bombing, the practice of showering newcomers with attention and affection to draw them in, within some Urantia circles. The promise of secret cosmic knowledge and spiritual advancement can be powerfully attractive to certain personality types. Some former members have described experiencing a form of cognitive dissonance, where their growing devotion to the Urantia teachings conflicted with their rational doubts or outside relationships. The all-encompassing nature of the Urantia cosmology can create a worldview that's difficult to question or step outside of. It's important to note, however, that these more manipulative practices are not universal within the Urantia community, and many adherents approach the teachings in a balanced, non-dogmatic way. The lack of a rigid organizational structure or charismatic central leader has perhaps helped to mitigate some of the more extreme cult-like tendencies seen in other new religious movements. One interesting aspect of Urantia recruitment is the way the movement has intersected with other subcultures and spiritual trends. In the 1960s and 70s, the Urantia book found an audience among some in the counterculture who were drawn to its blend of spirituality and cosmic speculation. There have been connections with UFO enthusiasts, New Age seekers, and even some Christian groups looking for a more advanced theology. The Urantia teachings have also made inroads in some unexpected places. In addition to the celestial seasonings connection, there have been Urantia study groups in prisons, interest from some academics and intellectuals, and even influences on popular culture. The progressive rock band Yes, for instance, has incorporated Urantia concepts into some of their lyrics. This diverse appeal speaks to the Urantia book's ability to resonate with a wide range of spiritual and intellectual yearnings. For some, it offers a grand cosmic narrative that provides a sense of meaning and purpose. For others, it's a source of esoteric knowledge that sets them apart as spiritual initiates. And for still others, it's simply an intriguing work of speculative fiction or philosophy. The Urantia movement's recruitment and organizational methods reflect its origins as a revealed text rather than a personality-driven cult. The focus is always on the book itself and its teachings, rather than on human leaders or gurus. This has allowed for a certain flexibility and longevity, as the movement isn't dependent on any single charismatic figure. At the same time, this textual focus can lead to its own forms of dogmatism and intellectual insularity. The sheer volume and complexity of the Urantia book can create a kind of closed system of thought, where every question or doubt is answered with reference back to the text itself. As we turn our attention to the impact of these teachings on individual followers, we'll see how the Urantia worldview shapes the lives and perspectives of believers in both subtle and profound ways. The story of the Urantia movement is, in many ways, a story of how ideas, both inspiring and troubling, can take root in the human mind and heart. 5. Impact on followers. The impact of involvement in the Urantia movement on individual followers can vary widely, depending on the depth of their engagement and their personal circumstances. For some, the Urantia teachings provide a source of spiritual insight and cosmic wonder that enriches their lives. For others, devotion to the book can lead to social isolation, cognitive dissonance, or a distorted worldview. Let's explore some of the ways that Urantia beliefs shape the lives of adherents. For many casual readers or participants in Urantia study groups, the impact is relatively mild. They may find the book's elaborate cosmology intellectually stimulating or its spiritual teachings personally meaningful, without necessarily embracing every aspect of the doctrine. These individuals often integrate Urantia concepts into their existing worldview, perhaps seeing it as a complement to their Christian faith or other spiritual practices. A typical experience for this level of involvement might be attending weekly or monthly study groups where passages from the Urantia book are read and discussed. These gatherings often serve a social function as well, allowing like-minded individuals to connect over shared interests. One follower described her experience: "Our study group is like a family. We support each other, challenge each other's thinking, and grow together spiritually." The Urantia book gives us a common language to explore life's big questions. For more dedicated followers, the Urantia teachings can become a central organizing principle in their lives. They may structure their daily routines around study of the book, meditation on its concepts, and attempts to live out its spiritual ideals. Some report feeling a profound sense of purpose and cosmic connection through their engagement with the teachings. One longtime Urantia believer shared, "Discovering the Urantia book was like coming home. It answered questions I'd had my whole life about God, the universe, and why we're here. Now, I start each day by reading a paper from the book and reflecting on how I can apply its wisdom. It's given my life a depth and meaning I never had before." The Urantia book's emphasis on spiritual growth and service can inspire positive changes in some followers' lives. Many report becoming more compassionate, ethically minded, and focused on personal development as a result of their study. The book's teachings on family life and child rearing have influenced how some adherents approach relationships and parenting. However, deep involvement in the Urantia worldview can also have more problematic effects. The book's claims to cosmic truth and its complex, all-encompassing narrative can create a kind of intellectual and spiritual dependency. Some followers find themselves constantly referring back to the text to interpret their experiences or make decisions, rather than relying on their own judgment or other sources of wisdom. This can lead to a form of cognitive dissonance, where adherents struggle to reconcile the Urantia teachings with contradictory information from science, other spiritual traditions, or their own life experiences. One former member described this struggle. I spent years trying to force everything I learned or experienced into the Urantia framework. If something didn't fit, I assumed I just wasn't understanding it correctly. It was exhausting, and eventually, I realized I was twisting my perception of reality to match the book, instead of the other way around. The Urantia Book's controversial teachings on race and eugenics have caused particular difficulties for some followers. While many modern adherents reject or reinterpret these aspects of the text, others have internalized harmful ideas about racial hierarchies or evolutionary progress. This can lead to subtle or overt forms of racism and a distorted view of human diversity. One ex-member shared their experience grappling with these issues. I was drawn to the Urantia Book's spiritual teachings, but I couldn't reconcile its ideas about race with what I knew to be true. It caused a lot of internal conflict, and ultimately, it was one of the main reasons I left the movement. I realized I couldn't separate the uplifting parts from the problematic elements. It was all part of the same package. Social isolation is another potential impact of deep involvement in the Urantia movement. While there's no formal policy of shunning or cutting off outside relationships, the all-encompassing nature of the Urantia worldview can make it difficult for devoted followers to relate to non-believers. Family members and friends may find it hard to connect with someone whose conversation constantly returns to obscure Urantia concepts or who interprets every event through the lens of the book's teachings. One family member of a Urantia devotee described their experience. It's like my sister lives in a different reality now. Every conversation somehow comes back to the Urantia book or some cosmic beings I've never heard of. I miss being able to just talk about normal things with her. It's created a distance between us that wasn't there before. Financial impact is generally less severe than in some other new religious movements, as the Urantia community doesn't demand large donations or promote expensive courses or materials. However, some followers do contribute significant amounts to Urantia organizations or spend money on conferences, books, and other resources related to their study. The psychological impact of Urantia involvement can be complex. For some, the teachings provide a sense of cosmic significance and spiritual purpose that boosts their mental well-being. The book's emphasis on personal growth and overcoming negative emotions can be psychologically beneficial for some readers. However, others may experience anxiety or depression related to their inability to live up to the book's lofty spiritual ideals or fully comprehend its complex teachings. The concept of a long series of afterlife progressions can create performance anxiety about one's spiritual development. Some former members have reported a kind of cosmic burnout from constantly trying to align their thoughts and actions with the Urantia worldview. It's important to note that many Urantia followers maintain a balanced approach to the teachings, integrating them into their lives in healthy ways without becoming overly dogmatic or isolated. These individuals often describe the Urantia book as a source of inspiration and insight, rather than an infallible scripture. One such follower shared, "The Urantia book has been a valuable tool in my spiritual journey, but it's not the only tool. I appreciate its teachings, but I also draw wisdom from other sources and my own life experiences. It's expanded my perspective without narrowing my world." The impact of Urantia involvement can also change over time. Some people go through phases of intense devotion followed by periods of questioning or distancing themselves from the teachings. Others maintain a consistent, moderate engagement over many years. For those who do leave the movement, the process of disengagement can be challenging. The all-encompassing nature of the Urantia worldview means that leaving it behind often requires a significant restructuring of one's beliefs and identity. Some ex-members report feelings of disorientation, anger, or grief as they work to rebuild their understanding of reality without the Urantia framework. One former believer described their journey out of the movement. Letting go of the Urantia teachings was like waking up from a very long, vivid dream. At first, I felt lost and unsure of what was real. But gradually, I rediscovered a sense of wonder about the universe that didn't depend on believing in a specific cosmic story. It was liberating, but also scary and sad at times. In examining the impact of the Urantia teachings on followers, we see a range of experiences that reflect the complex nature of belief and the powerful hold that grand cosmic narratives can have on the human psyche. From profound spiritual awakening to cognitive dissonance and social isolation, The effects of engagement with the Urantia book illuminate broader questions about how we construct meaning and navigate the boundaries between faith, reason, and identity. As we move on to explore the controversies and criticisms surrounding the Urantia movement, we'll see how these individual impacts play out on a larger scale, shaping public perception and sparking debates about the nature of spiritual truth and the potential dangers of unorthodox beliefs. 6. Controversies and criticisms. The Urantia book and the movement surrounding it have been the subject of numerous controversies and criticisms since their inception. These range from questions about the text's origins to concerns about its doctrinal content and the practices of some Urantia groups. Let's explore some of the main areas of controversy and the perspectives of critics both inside and outside the movement. One of the primary controversies surrounding the Urantia book concerns its authorship and origins. The official narrative presents the book as a revelation from celestial beings, transmitted through an anonymous, sleeping subject. However, many skeptics and researchers have argued that the true author was likely William Sadler himself, possibly with contributions from his wife and other associates. Martin Gardner, a noted skeptic and science writer, conducted an in-depth investigation into the Urantia book's origins. In his book, Urantia, The Great Cult Mystery, Gardner presents evidence suggesting that Sadler was the primary author, drawing on his extensive knowledge of religion, philosophy, and science to create the elaborate Urantia cosmology. He points out numerous parallels between ideas in the Urantia book and concepts found in other works that Sadler was known to be familiar with. This authorship controversy strikes at the heart of the Urantia book's claims to divine revelation. If the text is indeed of human origin, it undermines its authority as a source of cosmic truth. Some critics argue that presenting the book as a celestial revelation amounts to a form of deception, even if Sadler and his associates sincerely believed in its supernatural origins. Another major area of criticism focuses on the book's outdated and often incorrect scientific claims. While the Urantia book presents itself as offering advanced knowledge about the universe, many of its statements about astronomy, physics, and biology reflect the limited scientific understanding of the early 20th century when it was written. For example, the book describes a universe with only 100 billion galaxies, modern estimates put the number in the trillions, and presents a model of atomic structure that was outdated even by the 1930s. It makes claims about the age of the universe and the origins of life on Earth that contradict well-established scientific findings. Dr. Matthew Rappaport, a critic with a background in physics, has written extensively about the scientific errors in the Urantia book. He argues that these inaccuracies are consistent with what an educated person in the 1920s and 30s might have believed, but are incompatible with the book's claim to be a product of advanced celestial knowledge. Perhaps the most serious and troubling criticisms of the Urantia book concern its teachings on race and eugenics. The text presents a hierarchical view of human races and endorses eugenic practices to improve the human species. These ideas reflect racist and pseudoscientific concepts that were unfortunately common in certain intellectual circles of the early 20th century but have since been thoroughly discredited. Critics argue that these racial teachings are not merely a product of their time that can be easily separated from the rest of the book's content. Rather, they are woven into the fundamental narrative of human evolution and spiritual progress presented in the text. This has led some to accuse the Urantia movement of promoting a subtly racist ideology, even if many modern followers reject or reinterpret these aspects of the teachings. Dr. Sarah Lewis, a sociologist who has studied new religious movements, comments, "The Urantia book's racial teachings are deeply problematic. They're not just an unfortunate appendage to an otherwise benign spiritual philosophy. Rather, they're integral to the book's entire cosmology and view of human development." This raises serious ethical questions about promoting or following such a text, regardless of how individual believers might try to reinterpret these sections. The Urantia movement has also faced criticism for its handling of these controversial elements. Some argue that the Urantia Foundation and other organizations have not done enough to distance themselves from or critically examine the book's problematic content. Critics contend that by continuing to present the entire text as a divine revelation, these groups implicitly endorse its harmful ideas about race and eugenics. Another area of controversy surrounds the intellectual property disputes that have plagued the Urantia movement. The Urantia Foundation's attempts to maintain copyright control over the text have led to legal battles and schisms within the community. Some argue that these efforts contradict the book's supposed status as a divine revelation that should be freely available to all. In 1991, a long-standing conflict came to a head when the Urantia Brotherhood, now the Fellowship, split from the Foundation over issues of control and interpretation of the teachings. This schism highlighted tensions between those who favored a more open, adaptive approach to the Urantia teachings and those who insisted on strict adherence to the original text. Kristen Mahara, who was involved in one of the copyright disputes, stated, "If the Urantia book is truly a gift to all humanity, as it claims to be, then why is the Foundation so determined to control its distribution? This seems to go against the very spirit of the teachings." From a theological perspective, the Urantia book has been criticized by both mainstream religious leaders and other spiritual teachers. Many Christian theologians view its reinterpretation of Jesus' life and teachings as heretical, arguing that it undermines core Christian doctrines about Christ's nature and mission. Dr. James Walker, a Christian researcher who studies new religious movements, observes, "The Urantia book presents itself as an expanded, more accurate version of Christian teaching. But in reality, it fundamentally alters the nature of Christ and the meaning of salvation in ways that are incompatible with traditional Christian belief." Some New Age and esoteric teachers have also criticized the Urantia book, arguing that its elaborate cosmology and complex jargon serve more to confuse and intellectually entrap seekers than to provide genuine spiritual insight. They contend that the book's massive size and intricate detail can lead to a kind of spiritual materialism, where followers become more focused on accumulating cosmic knowledge than on genuine inner transformation. Alan Watts, the noted philosopher and spiritual teacher, once remarked on the Urantia book, "It's an astounding work of the imagination, but I worry that it may do more to feed the ego's desire for grand cosmic narratives than to foster true spiritual awakening." Former members of Urantia study groups have raised concerns about subtle forms of indoctrination and social control within the movement. While the Urantia community lacks the strict hierarchical structure of many cults, critics argue that the complexity and totality of the Urantia worldview can create a kind of intellectual dependency that's hard to break free from. One ex-member shared, "When I was involved with the Urantia book, every question or doubt I had was met with, 'Well, have you read this paper?' Or, 'You need to study more to understand.' It created a closed loop where the book was always the answer, and outside perspectives were dismissed. It took me years to realize how limiting that mindset was." Some mental health professionals have expressed concern about the potential psychological impact of deep involvement in the Urantia teachings. They argue that the book's grand cosmic narratives and complex spiritual hierarchies can exacerbate tendencies towards magical thinking or delusions of grandeur in vulnerable individuals. Dr. Rachel Klein, a psychologist who has worked with former members of various new religious movements, notes, "While many people engage with the Urantia book in a balanced way, I've seen cases where individuals become so immersed in its worldview that they lose touch with reality. The book's claims about cosmic importance and spiritual evolution can feed into narcissistic or paranoid tendencies." Critics have also pointed out inconsistencies and contradictions within the Urantia text itself. They argue that these internal discrepancies undermine the book's claim to be a unified, divinely inspired revelation. Some of these contradictions relate to scientific facts, while others involve philosophical or theological concepts. Matthew Block, a researcher who has extensively studied the sources of the Urantia book, has documented numerous instances where the text appears to draw directly from human-authored works of the early 20th century. This includes not just scientific concepts but also spiritual and philosophical ideas. Block's work has been used by critics to argue that the book is a human compilation rather than a divine revelation. The Urantia movement's connection to the business world, particularly through Mo Siegel and Celestial Seasonings, has also drawn criticism. Some argue that this represents a commercialization of spiritual teachings or raises questions about the use of religious ideas to promote business interests. Defenders of the Urantia book and its associated organizations have responded to these criticisms in various ways. Many argue that critics focus too much on isolated elements of the text without considering its overall spiritual message. They contend that the book's insights into personal spiritual growth and cosmic meaning outweigh its dated scientific content or controversial racial teachings. Regarding the authorship controversy, some Urantia believers argue that the complexity and scope of the book's content make it unlikely to be the work of any single human author or group of authors. They point to the consistency of its philosophical and spiritual teachings as evidence of its superhuman origin. On the issue of racial teachings, many modern Urantia students acknowledge the problematic nature of these passages but argue that they should be understood as reflections of the cultural context in which the book was produced rather than essential doctrines. Some advocate for a metaphorical or allegorical interpretation of these sections. The Urantia Foundation and Fellowship have made efforts in recent years to address some of these controversies. This includes publishing statements distancing themselves from racist interpretations of the text and emphasizing the book's teachings on the equality of all people before God. However, critics argue that these efforts don't go far enough in critically examining the text's problematic elements. As with many new religious movements, the controversies surrounding the Urantia book and its followers highlight broader tensions between faith and skepticism, between the desire for cosmic meaning and the need for critical thinking. They raise important questions about the nature of revelation, the responsibilities of spiritual teachers, and the potential dangers of uncritically accepting elaborate belief systems. In our final section, we'll reflect on the significance of the Urantia movement in the broader landscape of modern spirituality and consider what its story can teach us about the human quest for transcendent meaning. 7. Conclusion. As we conclude our exploration of the Urantia book and the movement it inspired, we're left with a complex tapestry of cosmic speculation, spiritual yearning, and human fallibility. The story of this unusual belief system offers valuable insights into the nature of faith, the allure of esoteric knowledge, and the challenges of navigating the boundary between inspiration and delusion. The Urantia movement emerged in a period of rapid scientific advancement and social change, when many were seeking new ways to reconcile spiritual beliefs with modern knowledge. Its elaborate cosmology and attempt to blend scientific concepts with religious ideas reflect this cultural context. In many ways, the Urantia book can be seen as an ambitious, if flawed, attempt to create a grand unified theory of spirituality, science, and human purpose. One of the most striking aspects of the Urantia phenomenon is its longevity and continued appeal, despite numerous controversies and criticisms. This speaks to the deep human desire for cosmic meaning and purpose that traditional religions or secular philosophies may not fully satisfy for some individuals. The Urantia teachings offer followers a sense of being privy to secret knowledge about the universe and their place in it, which can be powerfully attractive. At the same time, the problematic elements of the Urantia book, its outdated science, controversial racial teachings, and questionable claims of divine authorship, serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of uncritically accepting purported revelations. The movement's history highlights the importance of maintaining critical thinking and ethical reflection even in matters of faith and spirituality. The Urantia story also illuminates the complex ways that fringe spiritual ideas can influence mainstream culture. From its connection to a popular tea company to its subtle influences on certain New Age concepts, the reach of the Urantia teachings extends beyond its core group of dedicated followers. This serves as a reminder of the porous boundaries between mainstream and alternative spiritualities in the modern world. For scholars of religion and culture, the Urantia movement offers a fascinating case study in how new religious ideas form, spread, and evolve. It demonstrates both the creative potential and the potential pitfalls of attempting to construct a new spiritual worldview from diverse philosophical, scientific, and religious sources. As we reflect on the significance of the Urantia phenomenon, several key questions emerge. 1. How do we balance the human need for transcendent meaning with the importance of critical thinking and scientific understanding? 2. What responsibilities do spiritual teachers and organizations have in promoting ideas that may influence followers' worldviews and life choices? 3. How can we approach unorthodox spiritual teachings with both openness and discernment, neither dismissing them outright nor accepting them uncritically? 4. What can the story of the Urantia movement teach us about the nature of belief, the power of narrative, and the human capacity for both cosmic wonder and self-deception? These are not easy questions to answer, but grappling with them is crucial as we navigate an increasingly complex spiritual and intellectual landscape. Ultimately, the story of the Urantia Book and its followers is a deeply human one. It speaks to our eternal quest for meaning, our desire to understand our place in the cosmos, and our struggle to discern truth in a world of competing ideas and claims. Whether one sees the Urantia teachings as profound truth, intriguing fiction, or dangerous pseudoscience, their impact and the discussions they provoke offer valuable insights into the nature of belief and the enduring human search for transcendent meaning. As we close this exploration, perhaps the most valuable lesson we can take from the Urantia phenomenon is the importance of approaching all ideas, whether mainstream or fringe, scientific or spiritual, with a balance of openness, critical thinking, and ethical reflection. In doing so, we honor both the human drive for cosmic understanding and our responsibility to engage thoughtfully with the world around us. The story of the Urantia Book reminds us that the universe is vast and full of mystery, but also that our greatest adventures in understanding often begin right here, in the complex landscape of the human mind and heart.